10 minutes to 8 on 3AW. A reluctance to spend superannuation savings means many Australians die richer than the day they retire, according to groundbreaking research by the CSIRO. Can you work that out? Well, I got this sort of...
Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation. What's scientific or industrial about someone else's super?
What, do they not call economics the science of wealth? Perhaps that's it. Chris Andrews is the Chief Investment Officer of Trobe Financial Services. Chris, good morning, dear.
Good morning, Ross. Good morning, John. Great to have you back.
Hey, the only problem being is, as a friend of mine says, or as a lot of people say, there's no pockets in a shroud. The only problem is you don't know when you're putting the shroud on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Look, no one's arguing, of course, against sensible living and careful budgeting, all those sorts of things. We'd expect that to go through someone's life. But what we're seeing is we see a lot of retirees live lives of hardship and then pass on quite large bequests to their descendants, to their children. And that's the sort of thing. We just don't want people to be experiencing unnecessary hardship in their retirement years.
I remember someone once told me that someone had asked the former, I don't know whether he's alive or not, so I'm not going to use his name, but he was the former boss of Channel 9 in Australia a few years back, and they said, how come you always fly first class? And he says, because my kids will.
Yeah, too right. Spending the kids' inheritance, I think, is a strategy we should all reflect on. Look, one of the drivers when people are taking on these sorts of approaches, when they're living too frugally in retirement, often what they're thinking about is, are there going to be large expenses popping up in my life that I'm not expecting right now? And that could be aged care bonds and those sorts of things. What they're forgetting in many cases is they might be out, if they've got a family home, they've got equity in that home, and there are products out in the market that can help them meet accommodation bond unexpected expenses like
Well, give us an example. If you're sort of saying, I'm quite happy to send me super, but I'm frightened that along comes expense X. What's the product that protects you against expense X?
Okay, so if someone's got a family home, what they're worried about perhaps is having to pay, that can be quite significant bonds to go into aged care homes. There are products, in fact my company, Trobe Financial, has one itself, where we can do a loan which draws down on the equity of the house.
Is this the reverse mortgage?
Well, reverse mortgages are one option, but there are other sort of aged care-focused products that aren't technically reverse mortgages, but act in a similar way, where you're drawing down on the equity of the home and not incurring cash flow expenditures as you go along that can make, that can generate hardship in as you're living. So. Really, there are more tools out there than most retirees, I think, take into account.
But when people retire, you see, they're not necessarily living frugally, but as you get older, you need less things. You're not so inclined to travel as much. You don't eat as much. You don't need as much clothing.
Yes, there is some truth to that, but I'll have to say I've seen from my own personal experience, I've seen that also, I think the habits of a lifetime can sometimes kick in, and you can see perhaps if you've got an elderly relative in hospital, they might be not wanting to spend the $5 or the $10 to get themselves access to a television, for example, when that would be an expense that they could easily accommodate. So, I think most of us have seen this sort of phenomenon where people are subjecting themselves to hardship needlessly.
Chris, lovely to chat with you as always.
Terrific. Thanks, Ross. Thanks, John. Have a great year.
Good on you. Chris Andrews, Chief Investment Officer of Trobe Financial Services.